Hello, everyone. Welcome back to WunderWisdom. This is podcast number, what did we say, Scott? Three?
Three, indeed.
Three. And this is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021, all day.
All day.
You assured me of that. And today's episode of you and me chatting is about connection. What a concept. And I think we just decided that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we planned to talk about connection, but the what a concept came just because it's fun. You got to have a little bit of humor about this,
No, nothing should be funny. This is very we're always serious. There's no smiling and laughing aloud here.
Never.
Yeah, I remember talking about this a while ago, and I told you that I was thinking, for whatever reason, about what was important to me these days, because we've had a lot of things stripped away from us in the outside world, outside of us. And of course, it's all how you perceive what's been taken from you. But I was thinking about what was left, what was important to me, what lit me up, what lit my fire, where's the juice and the jazz for me. And I realized the word was connection. And it's connection, not just with people, but it is with people. That's really, really important to me. But it was connection with ideas, connection with beauty, connection with music. And then I was talking the other day with somebody, one of my clients, and she said, I call that wonder, WONDER. And I thought, well, how interesting is that, given that we're the WUNDER, wisdom. And it's like that, it's the momentary wonder and awe of the moment that you are immersed in bliss, or whatever you call it. I mean, semantics is a funny thing, right? Language is the best vehicle we have to communicate our thoughts and our emotions and our ideas. So be the best with it. But those are the words that speak to me, creating more moments of bliss, stringing the most number of moments of bliss along in life that you can is really what's called for these days. And so connection was it for me. What about you?
It's funny. I just learned a couple hours ago that if you trace the etymology of the word love, it means union. And I think union is so much connected to the word connection. It's the idea that if everything is utterly connected, if everything is unified under something, kind of connecting everything, it's so easy to find, common ground and to appreciate other things. And, I always like tying things to science and the physical human body. That's my thing. And going down to the cellular level, I find so interesting that a healthy body is when all your cells are genuinely connected and communicating and talking to each other. And it's the same thing. There's an absolutely fascinating documentary called Fantastic Fungi. Highly recommend everybody watch it. And it talks about the fungus that is underneath your feet every time you walk. Now, when I say that, every footstep that you take, there's 350 kilometers or miles of fungus underneath your foot. And it is literally the nervous system of the planet which connects everything. And it's so fascinating. It's just amazing. The lessons that we can learn from nature, like the physical of how things are, all of nature is connected. And, because we impose our humanness on it, we tend to think it's competitive, but it's not. It's literally all cooperative, and it's all connected by the fungi. And whether you're looking at our body, you're looking at every other living thing, connection is just the thing which allows life to flourish. And it's fascinating hearing people talk when they're inspired with life and when they're in a wonderful thing, they feel connected to life. It's funny, we use words to grasp at concepts, but the idea of connection, personally, for me, it feels like I'm full. Like when I'm with the homies and having a wonderful time and genuinely connecting with people, I get filled up and it just feels like life is right.
Yeah. And that's that feeling of love. I think that's what people identify with love. Is that full feeling, that fulfilled feeling, the balance, the wholeness, the groundedness. So many words can describe all of this. And the truth is, as human beings, we need connection in order to, like, I remember years ago learning that, babies that weren't, they were cared for physically adequately, but they weren't picked up and held and loved. They failed to thrive. I mean, right from the word go, we need the love and attention and care and compassion of our parents, of our families.
Yeah. I think it's one of the necessary things as human beings. We are so complicated and life is so complicated. Like there's so much going on and there's so much to think about and there's so much to take care of, really, to even live as a human being. It's just a necessity that we have to rely on other human beings for some things. And it's not in any way a disempowering thing to say you can't do it by yourself. But a friend is twice the pleasure and half the grief. And it's that idea of when we are able to work together, really connecting with people. I mean, life is just better. It works better. And when we come into this world and we are first taught that there is love for us from a mother and from a father, which is like the entire world that we know, or a sister and a brother, then we feel like we are like literally connected to a loving force in the world. And so I just want to quickly go off for a second. It's fascinating when they look at health studies of people who have some type of like a religious or spiritual foundation, or let's say a spiritual path or an undertaking, they always have better health outcomes. And it just, to me, it took a while to kind of think about, but it seems to make sense now that when you feel, again, loved and cared for, like you feel like you're connected to something that cares about you, it is so disarming and it's calming and it's reassuring. And I think we can all connect with that feeling. There goes connect. When we connect with something which feels like it cares for us, whether it is a mom, a dad, or whether it is just a genuine source, God, life force, whatever it is, that always shows better health outcomes. And I think even just the better health outcomes is the metaphor to say that life thrives with connection, because life is literally connection,
One of the words I took note of, and I almost counted, was the number of times you said feeling and feelings.
Yeah.
And growing up, and I am 35. Forget
with only a couple of years of experience.
Forget the fact that you're 25. Don't do the math. We were raised and conditioned to be in our heads, and it's, your feelings, generally speaking, to put a blanket on this, is your feelings don't count. They're a waste of time. They're a waste of effort, and push that aside and move forward with force and will and drive and your mental capacity, and to our detriment, of course, because some of us have lost our connection with our ability to feel. We've lost our emotional literacy because it's been almost pounded out of us. And so feeling is a big one. And, I think about what happens when we, as babies, for example, when we're touched, when we're held and kissed and stroked and all of that. I mean, it's the serotonin that is released, and the dopamine and the oxytocin and all of these good feeling chemicals in your brain, but also in your cells. And this is what is rejuvenating. I mean, this is what heart math teaches. And this is how you create heart coherence, is with renewing emotion, which creates feeling, which creates all the benefits of the heart math techniques, which I'll talk about in a second. This is, you're right. You're talking about better health outcomes.
So I just learned another fascinating thing today. Apparently, looking back, it's been quite the day. So this was coming from Zach Bush, and he was basically talking about the food industry. And when you think about the food industry, they found a way to hack our neurochemicals. Like the taste of a chip is just so, and the crunch is so perfect, or the chocolate, right? Like the reason they're so successful, these major companies, is because they have scientists on board who know the chemicals in your brain, like the reward chemicals, like dopamine. Exactly. Here's what's fascinating. When you hug someone for 30 seconds, now that's a long time.
30 seconds now. Okay. I've learned it's 20 seconds, but
you're saying 30. So let's say 20 to 30. And it's not going to be the perfect on 20 or 30, but let's just say it's a long 30. Yeah. The more the merrier. But when you get that, you get a massive surge in dopamine. So when you literally connect with a human being for a prolonged length of time, you get that neurochemical release, which is just what you crave for. And so, to kind of tie it back to like the health outcomes, you want dopamine. There's zero doubt about that. Even serotonin, like there's a reason that we crave these things. And I think as we go farther away from genuine human connection, we still need it. So where are we going to get it from? And I think the problem is when we get so used to getting it from a Big Mac or from a bag of chips or from candy, When that becomes our source, we don't feel well, and then we don't look for it from other human beings. And then it just, the kind of our system breaks down because that's not how we're built properly, obviously. So it's fascinating that when we can get it from just literally connecting with a human being and physically, like the touch, like you're talking about, a mother, a mother and their child, or hugging your best friend before you eat, it radically changes you in such a profound way that you can, like, it's so somatically true that you hug someone for 30 seconds and there's no question that that was a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah. And that's interesting. It's making me think about, why we eat, why many of us overeat, and why we eat certain foods like the serotonin, dopamine, tryptophan, or whatever that is, inducing chemical foods, or foods that induce those states and those chemicals in our bodies, including junk food that excite the nervous system, or whatever it is you just said. And
Yeah.
very adequately, I might add. And obviously I'm a poor learner, but how we substitute with
Yeah.
those things that kind
Yeah.
of fill that hole. And of course that, I mean, I'm 20 pounds at least overweight because I haven't been doing enough activity. I am now, but and also substituting food for human connection because I live alone. So
Yeah.
it's just really interesting that all these connections with how we soothe, right? How we self-soothe,
Yeah.
and and how we need this. We do need it, and it's showing up in when we don't get it because we're prevented from connecting with other human beings, as we are now and have been for the last year and a quarter.
Yeah.
What we do to distract ourselves or to substitute for it. So it shows that we find ways to make do. They're hollow,
Yeah.
sterile, false ways, but we do our
Yeah.
best. So
Yeah. I noticed it in myself. And when I'm in fantastic conversation, I don't for a moment think about food, or think about, getting something. Like I feel so filled up by it. Or when I'm exercising, when I'm on a walk with a friend, something like that. And that was a big realization for me because, Sunday, kind of a while back, Sunday used to be my day where I'd kind of binge eat. It was like I could be, incredibly healthy, and I'd still eat fairly healthy on Sunday, but would eat a lot of food. And when I started to really ask myself why, well, I realized I was spending, like Sundays, I would say, is a me day.
yeah.
And the kind of the substitute for the outpouring of me and connecting with someone else was me kind of the food pouring back in. And I mention it every podcast, but I just can't not. In the polyvagal theory, basically talking about the nerve, the vagus nerve that regulates our facial muscles. When we aren't using that, if for communication, like a human to human communication, we're not moving our face. Eating is sort of a substitute for that. It sort of kind of uses the same muscles. It's not perfect, but that's where we can get to self-soothing through eating because we're kind of moving our mouth.
Is that
Exactly. Yeah. And so the eating is almost like a poor substitute for genuine kind of human connection. And I want to just throw this one thing out because you talked about eating and why we eat. And I don't want to go too far into the weeds about this, but I'm sure everyone remembers from their grade 11 biology, mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell. Like it's a running joke on social media because most people don't know anything about the body, but they'll remember that one thing. And basically the mitochondria they're the energy, the things, little bacteria which produce energy in your body. And you have 14 quadrillion in your body approximately. Like it's literally, it's remarkable. Anyway.
Again, whose job was to count all that?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
I wouldn't want that one. Anyway,
Yeah, no kidding.
You forgot halfway through.
Yeah, I know. Where was I? Got to start again. But with these mitochondria, when you're looking at what makes them run well, when you genuinely feel connected with someone and loved, they work perfectly. There's no woo about that at all. And I'll just drop a knowledge bomb. Basically, when you increase vagal tone, or the vagus nerve, which really comes on when you feel connected with a human being, when you feel cared for in that space, the vagus nerve comes on, and it's part of your nervous system, and it talks to these mitochondria and basically say, you can work perfectly. And by perfectly, there's two domains, quality and quantity. There's a balance. Quality is like getting a lot of energy, and then quantity is how long can that persist. So it's the idea of like health span and lifespan, like quality of life and how long you live, take that down to like a mitochondrial level. How much energy can they produce and how long can they do that for? When you are connecting with a human being, it's a signal to the things in your cells which produce energy, like, hey, you can work perfectly right now. And that's why you feel really, 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 really good. So when you are missing that genuine connection with the human being and you're not quite feeling off, we start to eat a lot because our mitochondria aren't really working that well. They're not that efficient. And so you're almost trying to like push food into them to make them work well. And so it's not quite that simple, but it almost is. And this is why, sometimes you can go for a nice long walk with a friend, or you can be in a great conversation and hours fly by and you feel fantastic. You haven't once thought about food. It's the idea of like eating because we need energy. It's hard to know when we're eating because we need energy or when we're eating because we're not getting filled up or fed by the other things which run our body. And it's weird because we're so trained to think of food, but when we get what we're looking for as human beings, without food, there's something magical that happens.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking too, it's any false need, also known as addiction.
Yeah.
For some people,
yeah.
For some people, it's other substances or activities.
Of course. Yeah.
That we fill that hole within us, that need for something. And we're not sure what that is, but designed to fill that hole. And, I'm also thinking about, there's this. Yes, we need people, no question. We need love. We need to be touched. We need to be cared for. We need people to feel compassionate towards us and empathetic and all of that. But we need to do that for ourselves too. And so this is almost the bigger topic because when we feel, so it's the connection within. And we can only go as far out as we create within. So there are ways to fill ourselves with love and connection and respect and regard and all of that without needing someone else to fill that for you. And then you can, as within, so without. Now you can have that healthy relationship with somebody, and there's not that codependent thing that you don't need somebody, but you want somebody to share your life with. So here's the difference. And this kind of happened for me in a recent dating situation. And I began to see that most men that I've met have a need that needs filling. And it's almost like they'll invite anyone into their life to fill that space. So you're simply a space holder. And so and the more fabulous you are, the harder they're going to work to get you to be that space holder. And this is probably where we didn't think we were going to go, but it makes sense to me at this point to say this. And I'm not going to be that space holder for somebody. I'm not going to be just there to fill a need. I want the guy, and I want friends, girlfriends, men friends, all kinds of friends who are fabulous, have a fabulous life, love themselves, and don't need me in their life, but want to share their life. That's the difference, right? So it's all about filling that need. And yes, we're talking about connection and all of that, but there's so many facets we can talk about. And it's how we fill our own need first in order to be there for somebody else.
Yeah.
Gone in this direction, but that's
it's perfect because it brings up a lot of thoughts. First and foremost, there's a video by, I probably bring him up a lot, Andy Puddicombe, co-founder of Headspace, was a monk for 10 years, one of the guys I'd really admire in life. And he made a video on what is loneliness. And it's fascinating to me that, monks can literally sit with themselves. And sometimes when you're in a retreat, it's a silent retreat, not for a day, but for an entire year and sometimes longer. And the interesting part is, he talks about the idea of loneliness as it's really just a concept. And it's fascinating because they don't feel lonely. And I think this is where it comes in, that when we connect with something like a God force, a source, whatever it is, we all have different names for it, but literally some fundamental greater power than us that we think cares for us. I truly believe that we can connect with that and get filled up. some people call it their higher self, their true self, again, whatever it is. But when it is connecting with something outside of you, in fact, ecstasy, the word comes from ecstasis, and ecstasis means to step outside yourself.
Hmm.
And there is an idea about that in connection where when you're connecting with something outside yourself, it literally feels like you're stepping outside your bounds and kind of becoming one with more than yourself, right? Like that is the foundation of ecstasy.
Okay.
So when we're talking about whether it's not just dating, but friendships,
Yes.
I think the people that we love to spend time with the most are the people that really bring the fantastic energy. And let's be honest, sometimes as human beings, life sucks. And it is nice to have friends that can be solid and kind of hold space for you. But more often than not, whether it's a partner, whether it's a friend, the people that bring their complete selves and then you bring your complete self, that is when it seems like the relationship, really does its best. And I think we have ingrained in our culture the idea of, like you complete me. And although that's cute and romantic, and I think it's a Tom Cruise movie,
Yes, it is.
where that's the famous line, but it's the idea of like, you're really only connecting with someone if they completely like your better half. But I think if you get two people who are kind of trying to fill their own void, personally, I can't, speak from a lot of experience, but I know just in kind of the friend relationship realm, the people that I connect with the best are the people that, are excited about their own life and inspired. And then when I'm able to bring that myself, those are the people that we can go on a walk, talk for 4 hours. And it's like time just flies because we're both bringing forth ourselves. Yeah.
That's what we started with, is what lights you up, like lights your fire. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
sexual. This is igniting every cell in your body, where you're running with chills and you're excited, and it's
Yeah.
just, you feel so good. This is the juice and jazz of life. And I think you and I both discovered that in our own ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the concept of unconditional love, of being in love with life, with people,
Yeah.
with the beauty of the earth, with the food, the food you just put in your mouth, that you appreciate the taste,
Yeah.
with the music you're listening to. I mean, this is being in love, I think. And so the idea of unconditional love being, not having attachment to outcomes. Right now, we're holding space for what can happen, holding space for somebody, to allow them to be them, because they're amazing, and
Yeah.
you know that they have the power to work out whatever they need to work out. That's the nature of love. Allowing to happen what needs to happen in the moment, without an outcome, without control, and all the programs that we run to fill that space in our own life. Right. So that's being there
Yeah.
for somebody else. That's really the nature of
Yeah.
a true connection. And that's so with men and women, with children, elderly people in our lives, with the grocery clerk,
Yeah.
the barista at the cafe, whatever. This is what the nature of connection truly is. Healthy connection, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a real stability that comes when you connect with yourself. And it's kind of hard not to fall into cheesy words when you say something like connect with yourself. It's one of those that like it when you
What does
feel
that
it.
mean? What does it mean? It's like self-love. I grappled with that for years. I get it. I got to have that. What does it mean? And now I
Yeah.
have a better idea.
And I'll steal from Alan Watts. We can't use words to describe it because it's not words. Like when it's, again, like we know it when we have it. When we're saying like, I really feel connected to myself or connected to the world, whatever that is, it's the kind of innate knowing or feeling, that's really the foundation of it.
Mhm.
And I think it takes a lot of work for us to really get that solid kind of self connection foundation. And then we can hold space for people. When you're kind of distraught and in the dumps, it's really hard because when someone else comes, like it's hard to be that solid foundation.
Because
And
you
so
don't
I
have the
think
energy. You haven't created the energy and the platform and the foundation
exactly,
to just hold, right?
just hold. Yeah. And there's, again, learning from Stephen Porges, father of polyvagal theory, he's talked about the fact that when people like, when they're mad and, like a friend who just wants to vent, it is absolutely not your job to try to fill in their gap or to try to really help them. And in fact, what he says is there's even a slight misconception about empathy because, if they're really sad and they're telling you about something like that, and then let's say you're telling me, something terrible that happened today, and I'm not able to kind of hold the space and stay solid, and I end up feeling kind of really terrible, there's an innate guilt which happens in you because then you've made someone else feel terrible by that. And so it's the idea of, and this is something I'm really playing with, the idea of empathy is not like, if you feel terrible, then I got to meet you down at the terrible and then we can just be in the dumps together. Because, who you're really helping at that point. The idea of solidly holding space is, can I find an appreciation of myself and for life first and foremost? Then can I bring that to you so that as you're kind of working and processing through me, I can allow these emotions to run through me without being shaken. I can still have my solidarity and knowing that, life is okay and we're going to get through this together. And it's a different take on empathy. It's not like I'm going to feel terrible because other people feel terrible. It's I'm going to first find my solidarity so that I can provide that to you. And we all know this if we've flown. What they say is when your gas mask comes down to the oxygen mask, you got to put it on yourself first so that you can help other people. If you don't do that and you don't find your solid oxygen, you're going to pass out when you're trying to help other people. And then, no one's really able to get helped. So it's not necessarily like a selfish thing, but it's more so if you actually want to be of service to other people, then you actually have to, you got to kind of bring yourself.
You got to bring your
and your full self.
Yeah,
exactly.
And the more work you want to do, the more you got to bring your A game. So this is an as with thing. So I recently wrote an article that I posted on social media, and I called it "Care versus Overcare." And this is a heart math concept. And so Doc Childrey, the founder of Heart Math, wrote this. I'd like to read it.
Sure.
The world needs our care now more than ever. And these days there is so much to care for: a pet, work, or a family, health, and the planet. But how do we deeply care without depleting our energy? What does it really mean to have balanced care? What happens when that care turns to overcare? When we excessively worry, over-identify with, or have anxiety about the object of our care? Overcare is easy to fall into because of its stealthy way of making us feel that we are caring more when worry is added. And this is not the case. Increasing our genuine care provides a connection with our heart, which promotes flow in our interactions, along with a clearer view regarding our discernment, choices, and actions. However, often our most caring intentions can easily dip into amplified stress and energy drain when things we care about don't go the way we wanted, such as health, finances, political, or personal issues that trigger stress accumulation. We can learn to balance and manage our care to prevent and reduce much stress and associated health concerns. And he also says overcare or imbalanced care is a deeply imprinted human tendency that's handed down through each generation. It's like an energetic virus that can only be cured through conscious self-adjustment of our emotional energy expenditures. So again, that directly and funny, I just posted this. Just the idea that it's when we feel that we have to identify with and get down into the emotional trenches with people's conditions that we care. And that's not the case, because when we're allowing our own energy to be drained, we're of no use to anybody.
I'd like to tie it back to kind of what we started with, the idea of connection. And again, it's the idea of like connection to self and then a connection to something greater. I think that's really where our stability comes from. Because when someone is in the dumps, they have a temporary worldview that like the world is distraught and it's wrong kind of thing. And so it seems like the more powerful force of the world is loving, it's okay, it could be better, like whatever that is, I think it has to come from the connection with the self, which is something akin to a true knowing that things are okay and things are working out. And then that stability when held is the stability that you can hold for other people. And I got to say, I really love that article because it's something that I've been thinking a lot about and really meditating on and contemplating, because I have a fascination with the international water crisis. And
tell us.
Sure. So it's actually a misnomer. There's absolutely not an international water crisis. Right now, there are approximately 700 million people that do not have access to safe and clean water. Or the better way of saying that is they do, but the amount that they have to pay or walk or what they have to deal with to get it is completely inhumane. So we have 700 million people that essentially don't have access to safe and clean water. I term that an international water miracle, because what that means is that 90% of the population has access to safe and clean water, which is, it's a fundamental human need and it's something you just can't get around. And we found a way to get essentially 9 out of 10 people access to safe and clean water. Our water system here is absolutely incredible. Like, we don't realize how shocking it is that every time we turn on a tap, it's perfect, it's clean enough, it's whatever temperature, like it's literally miraculous. However, 700 million people don't have that same, we'll call it a luxury, but it's a human right. Now, there is an organization that I'm incredibly fond of called water.org, and they found a brilliant way to turn $1 Canadian dollar into over a year of safe and clean water. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Now, the reason I brought this up is because when you want to take on something like the quote unquote international water crisis, when you start hearing the stories about what it means for families not to have water and not to have a toilet, and I want to drop something heavy just, to really paint the picture. So if you don't have a toilet in your home, which is the case for, I believe, 2 billion people, okay? If you don't have a toilet in your home and you're a woman and you have to go to the bathroom at night, you have 2 choices. You can hold it in all night, or you can walk outside in the dark at night, find your way into bushes and go to the bathroom. That drastically increases your chance of being kidnapped and pretty gnarly stuff happening. So I'm sorry to take a pretty dark turn, but it's a reality for an incredible amount of people around our world. Now, that is just the tip of the iceberg when you start hearing these stories. And the reason that I bring this up is because I have to personally, if I want to make any sort of difference, I have to be able to connect with some greater power of inspiration, of genuine love, of belief that it can and will get better. Because if I let myself get drained by all of the negatives of the international water crisis, I will be of absolutely no help to the international water crisis.
That's horrifying.
It is horrifying. And it doesn't mean being a sociopath and shutting off emotions. That's not it. It's kind of like a little bit of consciousness is dangerous. What you got to bring is a whole ton of consciousness, meaning a little bit of kind of terrible emotion is bad. Being a sociopath is even worse. It's bringing that genuine sense of love and care to this situation, knowing that it's pretty gnarly, but still in that maintaining the perfection of what could be. And so, this is the big project, and I don't want to talk about it right now because this could be, hours and hours of presentation. But it's going to be my mission on how I can make an impact in this international kind of water crisis and, let's be honest, sanitation and toilet crisis. And I have to learn this lesson of connecting with some genuine great power. And I'm not talking like thinking; it's that somatic body feeling, like what they say deep down in your bones, knowing that things are going to get better in order for me to actually have a genuine outcome on this, on this problem.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes that horror, that anger, the feeling of injustice and unfairness and disrespect and all those things that, you want to watch me lose my shit. Talk to me about injustice, unfairness, and disrespect. And I'm gone.
Yeah.
But it's a catalyst. It catalyzes action, right?
Yeah.
We often have to be propelled in a positive direction by something that is a crisis on some level for us. So it's okay to feel that, to recognize, but it's what you do with it. Do you stay in it? What you focus on expands, right? Do you stay in it and just keep, here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem. Guess what? That's all you're going to see is the problem. But when you go, okay, that pisses me off and I want to do something about it, something that moves you, which this obviously has, now you're sure in your direction, you're launched in a direction of solving the problem. And now you're solution focused, you're not problem focused. So amazing. And I love how you raised the idea of connection with something bigger. Maybe this doesn't fit, but it went better in my head. I started it, but anyway, Heart Math talks about, what's the soundtrack of your life? And so I I liken it to what's your inner music, right? How you have tuned yourself into how you feel and your expectations, and because this colors what you see, is how you see life. And I think I've shown you the video that HeartMath has produced. Sorry, I'm just going to turn down my volume because I think you're hearing an echo, Scott.
Yes.
So the video is really clever. There's a soundtrack that runs through the entire video, and it's like violin, and it's a beautifully composed classical music piece. And half of the, just describing this, you'll get it. So half of the video is a person sitting in a cab running through New York City, and so looking at all kinds of different views of the city and who's doing what. And the first half is through a very discordant, dysregulated, awfully pitched a form of the music. And the second half is it's in harmony, and it's beautiful, and it's beautifully played, and it's in tune and all of that. And you see the same views that you had in the first half, but people will report it's a whole different ride. It's a whole different view.
Yeah.
And until they watch it again and they see it's the same thing, it just, how the music was playing colored how they felt about what they were looking at. And so that's the point, is what's the soundtrack of your life? How are you tuning your music? How are you within? Because as within, so without. And we talked about this, I think it was our first podcast. We talked about skin being the final frontier. And that is that everything that we create within ourselves, under our skin, is what is projected out into the world. And so, creation or not, do you believe that life is hostile or friendly? I mean, that's one of the things, I think was it Albert Einstein who came up with that?
Correct. Yeah.
So we are responsible for our connections, and we need to stop the outer blame. I mean, there's some reasons for why we are restricted, but we can create those connections for ourselves, whether it's reaching out in the ways we're allowed to, but creating within ourselves, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But that inner soundtrack, that's really poignant for me.
Yeah. I think you're hitting something right on the mark with music. It's been called the universal language. Absolutely. The universal connector,
unifier.
And to bring it up, the idea of a music festival to me is absolutely fascinating. It's universal and it's timeless. They are found all over the world, and the idea of humans gathering together to dance along to music is, as far as I know, as old as kind of human ritual or religious ritual goes. And Jordan Peterson has talked a lot about the absolute necessity and integrity of having drama, and especially like the music that's part of these religious ceremonies. And to me, it's absolutely fascinating, because the type of music that I really like is EDM. And that's a very broad category, but it's the kind of electric, produced stuff. And a lot of times there isn't words with these songs, but it can do something in you, and it can turn you on in ways which is just like, for example, there's the song Strobe by Deadmau5. I've meditated and cried to it a number of times. When I was a strength and conditioning coach, I used to use the intro of it for the meditation at the end. And when I tell you that I had junior B hockey players asking me if we could do the meditation because they felt so good, and this song was a key part of it. I had people come to my workouts who literally said, I could care less about your workout. I just want the 5 minutes at the end. And the strobe is the part of it, like the music. And to me, the idea of human beings connecting to music, I think it's like one of the ultimate things that's really going to help save us, because it transcends anything. It transcends any political party. It transcends any ideology. And I think what we're really getting at is, in order for us to connect as human beings, we don't necessarily need to find common ground in all our ideals. We need diversity. We need liberals and conservatives, like yin yang. The idea of balance is built into us. Acid base, wherever you look, you're going to find a dichotomy, a balance. But we need something which is fundamental, which can connect all of us, something that can unify us in spite of our differences. And the idea about music doing that and coloring our lives, I think is perfect. At a music festival, you can be around 30,000 people, a different religion. You might not speak their language. You might have nothing in common, but just your love for the same sound can like literally tune you in and connect you. And I mean, academics have talked about when you're at a festival, maybe it's even a club somewhere you're dancing with music, when everyone seems to like line up, there is a somatic, like in your body feeling of that, which literally you can't use words to describe. It's ultimate connection. And it's as close to, in my mind, divinity as you can possibly have. And it's to me fascinating that it's music. It doesn't even have to be words. It can be someone playing the guitar. In fact, I just want to end with this. If people are watching and made it this far, I really, 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 really highly recommend. Next time you want a moment, you got about 10 minutes to yourself. Turn off the lights, light some candles, and play or search a video on YouTube. John Butler Trio, Ocean live at Federation Square. It's literally just a guy and his guitar, but it's the most breathtaking sound of hope that I've ever heard. And to hear how the crowd responds to literally just the music, how they light up afterwards, I'm getting shivers right now because it literally is that idea of not only human beings connecting, but it's like we're connecting with something divine outside ourselves, which is, as we talked about, ecstasy.
Yeah. And the power of musical gatherings, for example, but there's other ecstatic gatherings, whether it's religious or any sort of appreciation of the arts. The vortex that is created, the power and the energy that is created amongst the people that radiates. And I have the fondest memory I have about music was seeing John Legend at the Molson Amphitheater. This had to be 6 years ago.
Yeah, I remember the story.
And when he sang the song, is it All of Me? I can't remember.
Yeah.
The acoustics in that covered amphitheater were so excellent that he stopped singing because the entire audience was singing the song. And I got to tell you, it was in perfect pitch. It was beautiful. And I think he cried. Can you imagine having your song sung back to you so beautifully and perfectly by, I looked around and everybody I saw everyone's mouth moving, everyone in the audience. And that moment I have never forgotten. It was so poignant and so touching and so beautiful. Just that sharing of that song. Anyway, it was incredible. And so I know that there's an example of what we're talking about. Everybody was unified in that song. In that song. And, the last thing I want to mention is it reminds me of back in World War II. And I can't remember if it was American or British on one side soldiers and the German soldiers on the other side of a trench, or maybe it was World War I. Terrible with my facts, but the point is that it was Christmas Eve. And so a ceasefire was called for and obeyed. And the soldiers crossed the line to share cigarettes and the singing of hymns, of Christmas songs.
Yeah.
If you can do that in that circumstance, you can do anything. And it makes no sense. Of course, then they went back maybe after Christmas Day and went back to killing each other. But in that, it was the unifying idea. And it was the hymns and the songs they sang together. Can you imagine being part of that? And how incongruent it would be to have to go back, the guy you just shared a smoke with and sang with,
and try and
shoot him? Like, come on, people. Anyway, but
it shows you the power of, again, like the idea of connecting with something greater than yourself. I mean, you're trying to kill someone on the other side, but it doesn't matter what situation you're in. You can always unify with another human being over some transcendent ideal. That's always available to us. Yeah. And, let's leave it there, because that is really profound. If that can happen, and did happen, when we're looking at the climate of today's world, it gives us hope, because we are all entitled to our opinions, and we, as all consenting adults, have all gotten to them in our own ways. And the point is not to get everyone to agree with us. but it is to find unity, coherence, cooperation, and connection about transcendent ideals and recognize the divinity of the diversity, but still finding the connection with greater things outside of ourselves. And I think when we fill ourselves up with that energy, boy, oh boy, does life get good.
Amen, brother.
Amen.
It's a beautiful place to leave this. And I think we're almost an hour.
Wonderful.
I forgot to introduce us. This is Scott Patton and Chris Patton. This is WunderWisdom, podcast number 3. If you've stayed this long, thank you for joining us on this this connection call. And I hope that we've identified some things in your life that was meaningful, helpful, relevant, inspiring, or something that you enjoyed. So thank you, Scott, as always, for, and just so everyone knows, this is free-flowing conversation. We don't plan any of these conversations. We kind of have a theme and we kind of run with it. And I know even the best laid plans, we've gone way off into the weeds, as you say.
But yeah, it's just another demonstration. When you're connecting with someone, it just free flows like a genuine connection.
Yeah, and this is meaningful. This is meaningful and important to us. And so if it's meaningful and important to you, all the better. So have a great month, everyone. Thanks for joining us at WunderWisdom, and we hope to see you next month. Take good care.
Bye, everyone.